welcome you all, basketball degenerates, to another episode of the Pass First, Shoot Later podcast brought to you by the OC Basketball League. I'm your host, Zico Pepic, here with my co-hosts, Michael Van Wyck and Omar Almadine. And just like always, Omar has like something going on that, just is always interesting. And for this episode, we're not going to be able to see Omar's face, which, I mean, it's kind of a good thing, right, Mike?
Yeah. I mean,
you know what?
Some people like it.
Hey, as a confident man, I'm okay with not showing my face either, so it's all good. Y'all don't got to see me. At least you recognize my voice.
Yeah,
No,
it's all
good. I'm
got
playing
nice...
around. Omar's driving, and he's still doing the episode with us, driving safely. Just he's gonna have just the background in there. He'll be talking throughout the episode as opposed to actually being there and present and recording. So that's totally fine with us. Again, Omar, just drive safe.
That nice background.
Yeah,
he figured it out and got it going. So
that's the real promoting of our podcast.
Yeah, except it's not the whole thing. It just says
we're just
first shoe.
First shoe.
Well, yeah.
It's like a signature of some kind.
You can see that OCB League though.
Yeah,
so.
we see OCB League. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
I'm rocking that shirt though.
Yeah. See, but hold on. But see what you guys are missing is your guys' big heads is covering the portion that my logo's showing, so it's kind of connect the dots there.
Good point, Omar. Great point there. Yeah. So now everybody can read everything.
There you go. Exactly. Upside to everything. And we didn't discuss doing a podcast at all before we just did this podcast right now.
No, yeah, we wing it every week, but
we've never talked about it before we actually just jumped on. We were all on the call at the same time, and we're like, "Oh, let's do a podcast." Similar to JJ Reddick never talking about the Laker job with LeBron James.
Never talked about it, but he got it.
He definitely didn't talk about setting up a podcast so he could show his basketball IQ in preparation for a potential NBA job of one of the most storied franchises. None of that was planned.
Yeah, let's start talking about that. So it's official. JJ Reddick has been signed to be the Lakers head coach. It's we talked about this a little bit on the last episode. I don't think JJ Reddick is going to be a bad coach. I think he's actually going to be a good coach. My only issue is, can JJ Reddick coach LeBron James? Will coaching LeBron James be the start and end to JJ Reddick's career? I feel like there's a lot of question marks here because he's going to be dealing with, and again, not a LeBron hater, I'm not talking smack about him, but he's going to be dealing with probably the biggest ego in the history of the NBA. And that is a challenge that most coaches have failed to handle. So it's a tall task. He seems like he's ready for it. He's confident. So I do respect his confidence. I do respect his interviews and his cursing in his interviews. I'd probably act the exact same way.
See,
you know what? He actually won me over. Sorry to cut you up, Mike. And I was very, very skeptical, and still am, about the signing of JJ Reddick. But that one part of the press conference that I shared with in the chat, where he was unapologetically himself in cursing in the press conference on his first ever NBA gig, let me know that he has a unique characteristic that might serve him well as an NBA head coach. I mean, we can't forget and we can't deny, yes, he's never coached before, and I was very skeptical and I was very vocal about the potential signing on the last episode. But that right there, that statement he made, reminded me that this man also played for a coach who was zero nonsense, who had a military background, who actually was able to manage the egos. And yes, I'm not comparing Coach K's coaching legacy and pedigree to JJ Reddick, but when you've played for a guy like that, sometimes they instill some certain characteristics that translate to later in somebody's career. And so for him to respond the way he did in his first ever NBA podcast lets me know that he has a little bit of Coach K in him, which is similar to Greg Popovich, those guys who came from military backgrounds who are zero nonsense, that might serve him well.
Yes,
I think
but
Go going to be a good coach. So go ahead,
I
Mike.
I think that there's a time and a place. I don't think there's any reason for him to curse in his first media interview, his first introduction. And I don't have a problem with cursing, obviously. But I just don't think it's something you're gonna do in your first interview. I don't like it. Just to me, you haven't done anything yet. You're on record saying, "Oh, I went from coaching fourth graders to this." You can be a no nonsense coach without doing that in your first interview. I mean, there's nothing to be that fired up about. And if you don't care and that's the message you're trying to convey, then you don't need to add that emphasis on it. So I think he does care. I think he does read everything. I think he is in being defensive by doing that.
You also need to remember, Mike, he was an elite level basketball player, especially at the college level. He was one of the best shooters in the league for years. He is extremely competitive. He's a winner. A lot of times, guys that are like that have that type of attitude, especially when they start. He's never been assistant, which I think could hurt him a little bit. He's going to have some growing pains with that. But I think that there's like a transition period that he's going to have to learn from being a player to a coach. And as a player, he goes on and says that, and it's like, good for you. Like, like doubt your critics, do some of that. But as a coach, it's a little different. I think
that's a new thing, though. That's a new thing. Cursing in interviews is a new thing.
No,
I mean,
is it really? No, it's not, Mike.
No, it
No,
is.
it's not, Mike. No, it's
Mike,
not,
do you not
Mike.
remember Jerry Sloan of the Utah Jazz? He was cursing all the time.
Yeah,
care.
there's exceptions. Now it's everyone's doing it. It's not new. It doesn't convey anything extra.
They cursed way more in the past than they do now.
No, absolutely. Because now they try to find them more than they did in the past. But Mike, just to actually, argue your point about, no need for that. I think Zico brought up a valid point. Is this is a guy who, I mean, yes, he was one of the greatest shooters in the league for a long time. But then again, he was also, the white boy that couldn't guard, who had an extended career in the NBA and started for a lot of the teams that he was on. We also know that Duke University, even though Duke has a lot of players in the NBA, until recent, a lot of those Duke players did not pan out for a long term in the league. So he defied some of the odds of a Duke player. I mean, think about it. Duke players, not too many of them had long careers in the NBA.
I mean,
and so he always played with a chip on his shoulder. So yes, he's going into his first coaching gig with a chip on his shoulder, the same chip he carried throughout his career.
What you're saying is crazy. I mean, the Duke players that have played there's tons of them that have had great careers. I mean, and to say JJ Reddick was a very, very good shooter, to say one of the greatest.
Hold on, Mike. Let's pivot real quick. Name like as talented
Elton Brand, Grant Hill, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williams, RJ Barrett, Grayson
Battier,
Shane Battier, Christian Laettner. I mean, Bobby Hurley.
Time out. Half of the guys you talked about did not finish their careers due to injuries. Yes. Okay. Shane Battier had the longest career out of all the ones you're talking about.
Elton Brand.
Really? Shane Battier had a longer career than that.
He did, but Elton Brand, I think, played 13 or 14 years in the NBA. So,
and then only had what?
Danny Ferry. Danny Ferry was like the old bald-headed white guy on the Spurs till like he was 40.
Mason Plumlee. I mean, that's crazy. Luke Kennard.
Luke. Okay. You can sit here and name and what I say panning out is these guys come in and have highly touted recruits. They play at Duke University. They get drafted, and they end up being either bench players or role players. And name like okay, so you got Brandon Ingram. Name
JJ Reddick. JJ Reddick is a role player. Let's not pretend that he's anything more than a role player. And he was a very good shooter. He's not
Yes,
in
he was a
anybody's
role player.
greatest.
Yeah, but
Carlos
he's a
Boozer
role
played
player.
like 15 years too.
Okay, but outside of Carlos Boozer and probably Elton Brand,
Christian Leitner, Brandon Ingram, Paulo
yeah,
Banchero is going to be successful.
that he might define. Yes, he's too early in his career, but yes, he's going to probably be the guy that
Zion's still
changes.
successful. He's just,
Yeah,
hurt.
Bobby Hurley. I mean, there's tons of guys, dudes. Come on.
How many? I want you to look it up, Mike. How many Duke players were
Well,
actually
Dang was great too. He's played had a long career. He just played for Thibodeau, who like ran him into the ground for 10 years.
okay? Out of all the Duke players you guys mentioned,
Kyrie Irving,
outside,
Jason Tatum.
Look,
I
we
mean,
didn't say that Duke has like the best of players. Like they are a storied franchise for sure, but their situation was always that they had teams that were great, not necessarily the best player. I agree with that if that's what you want to say.
I mean, Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum. You can just stop right there, right?
and those are two players out of the bunch that you mentioned. Add Paulo. Those are the only players that actually. Williamson is not living up to the hype that he has, even though he has good games here and there. We all talked about it. He can't stay healthy.
But they had
And
what I was saying, Omar, is they did have a lot of players who were successful in the league. Like even Mike Dunleavy Jr. Like he was touted as a role player when he came to the NBA, and he was a really good role player for 12, 13 years in the NBA. So they had guys that had successful careers that had
Yeah.
good money,
and
had good
and and
contracts.
and, and my point is most of the Duke players are great role players. Very few of them become NBA superstars.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, but that's
okay.
how many colleges
That's
legitimately
everywhere.
have
Yeah,
like
I mean,
unless you're Kentucky, like Kentucky has a ton of guys that became like legit stars, like from their
and
school.
then
Like
UCLA back in the
yeah,
day,
back in the day,
Carolina
like
back
so
in the day. But
which school is it right now that you're saying, oh, they're freaking they're just breeding them out there? Like what school else is doing it other than Kentucky? And Kentucky won't be doing it anymore,
Yeah, it's going to be Arkansas.
right? So like, which school is doing it? Like that you think is doing a better job? Because I
Well,
don't,
no,
aside from like
no,
Duke, like North Carolina and like Kentucky and UCLA, I can't like think of a school that's like, man, like every year they're just pumping them out. Like no other school really does that.
and apparently
It's
there's
hard.
25 WNBA players too who went to Duke. So I mean, you guys love that.
there we go, Mike. You can't,
Mike,
you
stop
can't.
hating the women, man. Come on, Mike.
I'm not.
That
I
might have
just
been
added
that might
to
have been
it.
the issue we had uploading the last episode.
I just added. I said there's 25 WNBA players that went to Duke. That's good. There's one,
I
two.
have to point this out.
There's 6 total that are active. That's insane. That's half of the WNBA.
We've had 3 episodes that had some sort of a flag put on them while they were uploading. One of them was the Keith Kloss episode for good reason, right?
Yeah,
I
for
don't
the Dennis
remember,
Rodman story.
yeah, I don't remember what the third one was, but last episode for some reason was a little if difficult to upload for some reason. But yeah, I don't know if it was Mike being hater Mike and hating on women now and
No,
Was that the
I
one
think
where I wore the jersey? That's probably
no,
why.
I don't think that was it.
Hmm.
no, I think right now you're not allowed to say anything about Caitlin Clark negatively.
Yeah, probably that's probably could be it.
I had nothing negative to say.
I know, I'm joking. I don't know
I
what it
said
was.
I didn't want to talk about it.
There might have been a word we used that like triggered it. I don't know. Let's move on from this. We want to make this episode short and sweet, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. Lakers did sign JJ Reddick. I'm gonna jump to one thing really quick because I don't want to go over the draft like right away, but it's kind of crazy that the Lakers signed JJ Reddick and then their first draft pick with JJ Reddick is a 6'5" lights out scorer in Dalton Connect. He was the 17th pick in the draft. I have to feel like JJ Reddick had some influence in this, but at the same time, nobody expected Dalton Connect to fall this far. He's one of the best scorers in college right now. Everybody projected him to be a top 10 pick. Somehow he fell to 17. It was one of those situations that the Lakers had to jump on it and take the best player available. And I'm pretty sure they're pretty excited about this pick. I don't know if you guys know anything about him. Phenomenal shooter, plays a lot like JJ Reddick did when he was in college. great to run off of screens, can just get bucket after bucket type of a player. So it was a great pickup for them. Omar, you know anything about Dalton Connect?
No, honestly, I didn't pay too much about college basketball this year.
Yeah, I was gonna say all I know is this draft is supposed to be terrible, so I can't imagine he would be fantastic.
Well, it's not that the draft is terrible. This draft has no superstars. There's not one guy, like it's not like we just had,
They're all from Duke.
No, I think there's only one or two guys from
No,
Duke.
it was a joke. 'Cause
Yeah,
they
okay.
produce
We
role
got one
players.
Duke player that was drafted. So yeah, one Duke player was drafted.
Which we're gonna give a shout out to him just because he's a California kid, went to Corona Centennial, and we're from California.
Yeah, we'll get into Jared McCain in a little bit. But yeah, this pick it's a great pickup for the Lakers. There's a lot of comedy with it that JJ Reddick is assembling an all-white team after some recent information was released. I think I sent that to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
You sent us to
We
that.
got to be careful with that one though.
No, that's crazy though.
I know.
I mean, there's stuff that's going to come out, and there's going to be people who say things, and
I know, but this pick I'm actually excited for. I think it was a great pickup for them. Again, he's the kind of guy, he plays like JJ Reddick. You can run him off screens. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to score, which I think is a really good fit next to LeBron. Again, knockdown shooter. I don't know how his defense will be in the NBA. I think Austin Reeves is a much better defender than this guy is, but he's the kind of guy you could bring in. He will score off the bench for this team. So I definitely like the pick. It's definitely similar to JJ Reddick in terms of styling. So it should be pretty easy for JJ Reddick to draw plays up for him at the very least. So yeah. There's a lot to talk about. We'll try and push through this as quickly as we can because again, we want to make this a short episode. We're going to backtrack a little bit. There was a trade. There's multiple trades that happened before the draft. One of them in particular was Alex Caruso from the Chicago Bulls being traded to Oklahoma City Thunder for Josh Giddey. And this is always a fun topic for us.
I got nothing to say. No jokes, but that was a terrible, terrible trade.
Was it?
Yes. Caruso is so much better than Giddey.
Oh, okay. It benefits OKC, which falls back into the conversation we had last week about OKC has a better chance of getting better and getting to the NBA Finals than you guys said about Minnesota. So I think that trade benefits OKC big time.
100%.
It definitely benefits OKC more. The only thing that I'm disappointed in terms of Chicago Bulls is the OKC Thunder have a ton of draft picks, and they made another trade today in the draft. They actually traded the Knicks number 26 pick for 5 second-round draft picks. How is it that you trade Caruso for Giddey and you get no draft picks back if you're the Bulls? Like the OKC Thunder have more draft picks than anybody. So I like this trade for both teams, to be honest with you. I think Chicago needs to start focusing on rebuilding, and they're already in talks to try and trade Zach LaVine. They're reportedly not bringing DeMar DeRozan back. So it's going to go into rebuild mode, and Caruso is a little older. He's more of a veteran type player. So I think that it's a really good trade in the fact that you can use Giddey as someone you could build a future with. And Alex Caruso is going to be perfect for the OKC Thunder because they're kind of in playoff mode and competing mode for title. Go ahead, Mike.
Can you really build around Giddey, or do you build
with
Giddey? Okay, because he's not a player you build around.
No, but see, that was like part of that's going to lead into the draft and what happened today, because things worked out pretty well for the Bulls when you consider the big picture. The reality is, if you start rebuilding, you're not going to get a superstar right away. Like, you need to start building with a few young pieces, get as many draft picks as you can, make sure you draft well in the draft. And I think that's a good fit for that team. They had Lonzo Ball on the team, who has obviously had a devastating injury. Like I liked Lonzo Ball. I feel really bad for him. There's conversations saying that he might not ever play again. So
Yeah.
being someone like Giddey, who's a pass first type of a point guard, like multi-skilled, can guard, can defend multiple positions, I think kind of replaces some of what they lost with Lonzo Ball, and they can start building forward with him. So
Do you think maybe they don't need the draft picks from Giddey because he's got an insight onto the like class of 2030, and he can just bring some guys and sign them like non-draft, just pick them up off the streets. Like, nah, this guy's good. Trust me.
if
Talk to
they're
his
trying,
girl.
if they're trying to build up their WNBA team, for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say the WNBA team for 2030 probably.
Well, these girls go to school with these guys, so they watch them play, right?
You know what, Mike? I hope our episode gets uploaded easily this time. So we're gonna move past that because you've been touching on this subject way too long right now. But I think Zico, you bring up a valid point, but the key that you brought up actually contradicts your point to a certain extent. That yes, you can bring a young player like Giddey and try to build with, not around, like you confirmed. But when you give up certain players and you don't get draft picks for them, you're really handicapping yourself as far as the rebuilding process. And had they traded like for Giddey and some additional draft picks, then that probably would help. I mean, Giddey would play in a similar role where, in OKC, where he, could play multiple guard spots and facilitate. But I think lacking the picks is going to hurt them in a rebuilding process.
I will say this though, Giddey was playing next to SGA, and when Giddey was first drafted by the team, there was a little stretch where SGA was hurt and Giddey was playing a majority of the minutes, and Giddey was phenomenal. He played really well. He was a triple double machine in that stretch. So there might be the viewpoint of, from the Bulls standpoint, you guys just held this guy back from his true potential. So I think he could really be a Lonzo Ball type of a player, especially if he kind of starts developing that shot, the 3-point range. So it could be just the value of OKC knowing that his value is higher than it was in terms of this last season's numbers, and the Bulls seeing that value. Because Giddey was also in talks to be traded for Lauri Markkanen, in a really similar deal. There wasn't any picks attached to it, and Danny Ainge didn't want to do it because he wanted the picks. So if you consider that, like Lauri Markkanen for Giddey, and Danny Ainge was considering it, but chose not to because he wanted more picks. Like they offered, I think it was 2 second-round picks and Giddey for Lauri Markkanen, and Danny Ainge thought about
So then
it.
that means Giddey's better than Caruso.
No,
So then that
I
makes
think
it.
he is. I think this is a more fit situation because again, Giddey did not fit towards the end of the season with the OKC Thunder last year. So I think just fit wise, this is just a better fit with Caruso on this team.
What do you guys think about the Bridges Bogdanovich?
Yes, the Knicks. I told you they weren't done. I told you more was
I
coming.
actually like it. I think it's an upgrade for them. Even though I know Zico, you did mention in our chat that was probably insurance for OG not returning, but now that they, you know, gave him that big contract, I think they're gonna have a deeper bench here,
Yeah.
and
I think
still maintain some defense and shooting ability.
they gave up
They got younger.
a lot of draft picks to get him and Bogdanovich. And are we going to say that Bridges is comfortable coming off the bench on this
He's
team?
starting, Mike. He's starting.
Who's coming off the bench then?
They're gonna bring Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart off the bench. Their starting lineup's
And
gonna
those
be,
guys are okay with it.
those guys came in expecting to be coming off the bench. Actually, to start the year, both of them were coming off the bench early in the year. However, the Knicks had one of the guys that they traded got hurt, and that was how Dante DiVincenzo started. Quentin Grimes got hurt, and then Dante DiVincenzo started filling in for him as a starter and just gelled. Both those guys were bench players originally. I don't think they have any problem coming off the bench. You're going to have Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, and then whoever remains at center. They might not be able to sign Isaiah Hartenstein now due to this OG Anunoby signing. So it could be Mitchell Robinson's your starting center, but I think they're going to trade Mitchell Robinson personally.
But you're looking at this and you say, okay, we got these guys. This is how it's set up. Let's say he doesn't gel. He doesn't fit what they're trying to do. And they're like, all right, well, let's try it off the bench. Is he okay then?
I think he's okay, but Mike, I think it's going to fit perfectly. If you look at what Mikal Bridges does, and you're going to put him in place of Dante DiVincenzo, he's a better defender than Dante DiVincenzo, and he's almost as good of a shooter. When he was with the Phoenix Suns and they got to the Western Conference Finals, he was the fourth option on that team, and he thrived in that role. He's going to be the fourth option on this team, and he's going to thrive in that role. And then on top of that, like probably what's most important to me about this is OG Anunoby. He just signed a massive deal. I personally think that they overpaid for him. Okay, I know that like in the scheme of things, like that's like, oh, the numbers after the new CBA deal, it's going to be a smaller number than it is, but 42.5 million for OG a year. It's the first year is going to be 38, but it'll balance out over it's a $215 million contract.
It's a lot.
Yeah, my worry is that, and I know this is the Knicks' worry, is you have a guy who is a defensive player of the year candidate, who is a game changer for you, who can guard 1 through 5, literally can guard 1 through 5, is probably the best in the NBA at it besides Kawhi. Like Kawhi is probably number 1. This guy from the perimeter is probably number 2. And that's how teams are looking at him. The teams wanted to pay him the max to take him away from the Knicks. Philadelphia and OKC were reportedly ready to offer him a max contract just to leave the Knicks. So the value, like teams valued him that much, but he's constantly injured. You know, he got hurt in the playoffs this last season. He wasn't there for the last couple of games that they played. He missed a ton of games during the season. So when you consider the Mikal Bridges trade, it's going to be huge to consider that, hey, OG's going to miss half the season because that's just the type of player he is. And to think now, it's like, all right, well, we'll just move Mikal Bridges to the 3 and we'll bring Dante DiVincenzo off as a starter. And then to still be able to have Josh Hart coming off the bench, you know, to play that 2-3-4 position is huge for this team. I think that the depth was there this season. However, with the amount of injuries they had, they put so much pressure on Jalen Brunson to do so much. The team probably looked at the situation and said, we don't want to be in that position again. So I think OG, I probably could have taken 35 million a year and been happy. I guess he really needed that extra, 7 million a year average to be happier. I would have liked to see him take less just for the team aspect of it, but the team will have to deconstruct some of their roster at some point. They don't have to right away, but it'll probably start with either Mitchell Robinson or Isaiah Hartenstein. So we'll see. But overall, I think it was a good trade. Numbers are going to be crazy for the team to figure out, but we'll see what management does. I don't think they're done. I think something more is coming. So
what else could they be doing?
Do you think there's a potential to possibly move Julius Randle?
So that's a potential, but I don't think it's going to happen. And the reason I don't think it's going to happen is you can't keep both Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson. And the biggest concern for the team is Mitchell Robinson also gets hurt all the time. I think the guy averages like 30 to 40 games a season because he constantly gets hurt. The team was already reportedly shopping him.
Package him with Julius Randle.
I don't think they're gonna be able to do that. That's $50 million that you'd have to move. And what team is gonna say, I'll take on all 50 million and eat it up so that you have cap space? No team will do that. But the team is already reportedly shopping Mitchell Robinson. They're looking for a salary dump. The Memphis Grizzlies were actually a team that was interested. I don't know what the deal was for. The Lakers were also interested. And one other team, I don't remember what the other team was. So there's a couple teams that are, New Orleans Pelicans are also interested. There was actually a deal for Larry Nance Jr. So it's probably going to happen that he gets moved and they cut some money doing so. That's what they did with Bogdanovich too. That's why the Brooklyn Nets chose to do that deal. Bogdanovich's contract, he has $20 million a year and it's only partially guaranteed. So they got 5 first-round pick and they get to dump Bogdanovich's contract. So
Yeah.
We shall see. Is Bronny going to get drafted?
he will get drafted. He will get drafted. I'm only interested to see who drafts Bronny, just because I have a feeling that some teams are going to draft him just to hold it over the Lakers' heads to try and get some draft assets back from them. Maybe 2 second-round picks for
And
one.
they have a late second-round pick, right?
Or do you think? Do you think whichever team drafts Bronny is hoping to do a sign and trade with the Lakers for LeBron?
I mean, who? Like, if it's Cleveland,
Golden
sure.
State.
Miami, sure. Golden State, sure. But like, I don't know if any team's going to do that.
Because who did they said that definitely not Phoenix, and who was the other one where they said definitely not? I feel like there was another team.
Well, he's only worked out for the Phoenix Suns and for the Lakers, which is the most random
Yeah,
situation.
but we also we also know that doesn't mean anything, because how many times players have worked out for teams and just to get drafted by a team they didn't work out with?
Right.
Because
That's what I said.
like you
Somebody's
said,
gonna try and hold the Lakers hostage.
yeah.
I
So,
can see
but
that.
to answer your thing about working out for the Lakers and working out for just the Suns, I mean, you know, KD and LeBron have a very close relationship. So, um, there could be a factor where that plays in. And you
Mhm.
guys got to keep in mind, like clutch is all over the NBA,
Right.
and so it's not far fetched that anything can happen.
The only team that I could see drafting him in, like, actually trying to woo LeBron would be the Philadelphia 76ers, because they have more cap space than anyone this summer. They've got like 4 guys under contract, including Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. They could sign LeBron to a max deal and put him on the team. So I could see them trying to do something like just to do it. And the irony is, there's more rumors going around. One of them in particular is that KCP is leaving the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets look like they might have some dismantling going on. They're reportedly shopping Michael Porter Jr. And KCP is looking to leave the team. And the team he's most expected to sign with is the Philadelphia 76ers. So would you be surprised if one of their clutch players signs over there, they draft Bronny and woo LeBron over there? I would not be, to be honest with you, because at this point they're looking at the Knicks, they're looking at the Celtics, and they need to do something drastic to make a move. And then Paul George wants to leave and sign with the Golden State Warriors. So there's a lot of potential movement going on. I think it's going to be a wild next couple of weeks, honestly.
How great
Yeah,
would it be?
I think free agency and trades is probably going to be more interesting than the actual draft itself.
Yeah. Let's you know what, we'll hold off of that conversation just because there's a lot of free agency stuff. I'll save that for next week because we'll probably start being able to talk about that next week. Let's get into this draft because again, I kind of mentioned this beforehand. I think this is not a great draft. There's no superstars in this draft, but I think for the most part, most of the teams made like really good draft picks in terms of their teams and fit wise. So I want to go over, not all of them. I want to definitely go over some of them. Is there anything you guys want to add before I start going to the draft?
No,
No,
I
I
just
think
think it'd be funny
I
if the Clippers drafted Bronny. I think that'd be hilarious.
That actually
that
would be
would,
hilarious.
but I wouldn't put it past Steve Ballmer because he's a business guy, so he understands what that would do for his franchise and
Yeah, I think it just get
revenue.
comfortable with Westbrook.
Well, then Westbrook would probably leave. or get traded. But speaking of going back to the draft, Zico, I think like you mentioned, this is one of the drafts that it's nothing really enticing. So I don't think, we should spend too much time on every single pick.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Well,
definitely
first pick, first two picks. Let's just do that. The first two picks are both Frenchmen.
French kids.
Yeah. Zachary Rissaker and Alexander Sarr. Um, I actually really like both these guys. I think they've got really good potential. Again, I don't think either of them is a superstar type of a player, but I think both of them could be really good players in the league. Rissaker, it was kind of a surprise for me to see him go number one. I really expected Alexander Sarr to go first, but Alexander Sarr refused to work out for the Atlanta Hawks. So he kind of forced his way to the Washington Wizards, which was a little surprising to me. I would have assumed he'd rather go to the
Which
Hawks.
I'd rather play for the Hawks than the Wizards, right?
Yeah, it is just really confusing to me, especially for like him to be able to like play with Trae Young and with DeJounte Murray, and it just felt like it would have been a good fit. But Zachary Rissaker, he's a good player. He's more of a prospect. He's
He
definitely like a
definitely is a prospect,
yeah.
and there's a possibility that he might be one of those players that gets. I know it doesn't usually happen with a first round pick, but there's a possibility that he might still consider staying in Europe. But doesn't usually happen with a first pick overall.
No, he's
But
coming over. He's coming over now.
but definitely a prospect, definitely off of potential. Because like I mentioned, I personally got a chance to watch him live in November. I'm sorry, back in March, April. And he really wasn't impressive. The game that I watched live, he wasn't actually a factor that game. So definitely surprising to see him go first overall.
He he's a 3-and-D type of a player that has playmaking potential. And I feel like a lot of the European type of players are starting to develop that. Like think kind of like Nicholas Batum when Nicholas Batum was in his prime. Like Nicholas Batum could handle the ball. He played small forward. He was a 3-and-D. He could shoot, but he also played a little of that point forward type of position where he could initiate the offense. He has similar game to that, a higher ceiling than Batum.
Boris Diaw.
Yeah, he's really thin though, Mike. He's like yeah, Boris Diaw's game inside Batum's body. That's probably the best way to compare him. And ironically, both French guys. So he could work out really well just because he'll be playing next to Trae Young. You know, he runs the floor really well. He plays defense really hard. He's got a long wingspan. I think it's like a 7'4" wingspan, and he's only about 6'8", 6'9". So he has the potential to be a really good defensive type player, and he could fit there really well next to Trae Young and become a factor. I think he's just going to take a few years to do so. So Alexander Sarr, that was kind of where I was like, I really thought that was number one. He has the potential to be the best player out of this draft. I think he can contribute right now, and in 5 years he kind of reminds me of Chet Holmgren. Like the same body. He's like 7', 7'1". He could block shots. He can shoot the three. He runs the floor. He handles the ball decently well. He's not Wemby, but I think he could be Chet Holmgren type of a player, which is a really good fit for any team at this point. Have a center who's long and athletic like that. Omar, did you see Sarr play when you were watching those games at all?
No, because he was actually, I believe Sar was in Australia
Mhm.
versus I was actually watching a Euro Cup game in Turkey,
Got it.
uh, and that's where I got to see Zachary.
Okay. Again, I don't want to spend too long on any of these guys. Reed Shepard was third. Stephen Castle was fourth. Ron Holland. We will talk about Ron Holland. You want to talk about Ron Holland, right, Omar?
Well, Ron Holland is one of the picks that I believe came out of the G League, if I'm not mistaken, right, from the Ignite
Correct.
team. So definitely he had a lot of not exposure, but spotlight on him, just like Scoot Henderson did. So definitely gonna see what kind of trajectory he's gonna have.
Hmm. Charlotte drafted 6th, and they drafted a guy named Tijani Saloon. This was one of the confusing picks to me. There's a couple confusing picks to me. He's an athletic forward, not a great shooter. Charlotte really needed shooting. They struggled with shooters last season. So this was like one of those picks where I was like, I felt like they could have done better. Saloon was actually projected to be like 10 to 15. So for him to be picked all the way up to 6, they probably saw something that we didn't. And then the other one was number 7, Donovan Clingan. Donovan Clingan is actually a really good player. He's a really good big man, probably the best, one of the best big men in this draft. Probably second behind Alex Sarr. However, they already have 2 other centers. They have DeAndre Ayton and they have Robert Williams. So I was a little confused by that.
Maybe one of those guys is getting traded. I would think. Right? You can't hear me?
I can hear you, Mike.
Okay, yeah, I would think one of those guys is getting traded. Or they're just testing them out to take a flyer. Who knows what's going on? Most of these college kids, these Euro kids, I know very little about. Once they start playing, I'll watch them. I'll watch a little bit of the summer league and see where they kind of fall in, see what their pieces are. But there's a lot of things that, like you said, there's off-season stuff. There's going to be, I think, some big trades that happen, some trades that don't make sense, and you look at this, and it's probably one of those things where they're just forget it, get rid of one of these guys. They're not going to work out the way we wanted to.
Mike, I will say this. This is why I think you might like Donovan Clingan. He's a lot like Brook Lopez. Like at his prime, he's like a Brook Lopez type center. He is 7'2". He can play defense. He can shoot the ball a little bit. He's really great with his back to the basket. I personally think they're trading Ayton. They probably looked at this as, wow, Ayton wasn't a good fit. We found
Nobody seems to like Ayton. Everywhere he goes,
I
nobody seems to like him.
know. That's one of those, like, you kind of got to swallow some.
So Mike, do you think he'll be a better fit with Minnesota over Rudy Gobert?
DeAndre Ayton?
Yeah.
Probably. He'll probably be that'll be his JaVale McGee stop, where JaVale McGee was all over the place, couldn't find a fit, nobody seemed to like them. And then he got to a team that had winning aspirations and he won a championship and turned his career around. So this could be that stop for Ayton. I can see that.
We'll see about that. I don't know if he's getting traded to Minnesota. Minnesota did make a trade for the 8th pick. The San Antonio Spurs actually traded the 8th pick, Rob Dillingham, to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I actually love this trade for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I was just talking about Mike Conley throughout this season as like this great veteran, but they really needed someone to kind of replace him. And Rob Dillingham, he's gonna need maybe a year or 2, but he's like one of those guys that I think if he like sits behind Conley and Conley starts teaching this kid, he's gonna be a good player in the NBA. He's fast, athletic, he can pass the ball, he plays defense. Kind of maybe reminds me of a DeJounte Murray type of a player. Maybe a little smaller than DeJounte Murray, but I think that was a great trade. I was surprised the Spurs did that personally because they kind of needed a point guard. So
they drafted a point guard 4th.
Yeah, Stephen Castle. Well, Stephen Castle is a combo guard too. So I don't know. I kind of personally like Rob Dillingham more than I like Stephen Castle.
But they're probably going to I would think the Spurs are going to make some moves as well in the offseason. I think they're going to have I don't want to say they're going to have a blockbuster trade. The only big blockbuster trade I've seen, I know we don't want to really get into all of those, would be the Durant to Houston.
It's not happening.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any huge moves like that, but the Spurs will definitely do something. They'll make waves. They'll be a more competitive team next season.
Just as a heads up, the owner of the Phoenix Suns, the new owner, I forgot what his name was, Matt Ichiban or something like that. He actually went to Twitter and said, I absolutely love Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant absolutely loves the Phoenix Suns. There's no way I'm trading him. We're fighting for a championship. We're building for a championship. It's not happening. So he wanted to cut the rumors out. Like there was no interest from him for moving him. So
good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Because
that doesn't mean anything with this NBA climate. That could
Yeah, but
easily
like, what are you
be
going to
fake
get if
news.
you actually trade KD? Like the Houston Rockets were offering you the number 3 pick, which ended up being Reed Shepherd. Like, what are you going to trade that's going to be like a game changer for you?
nothing, but realistically, we disagree on Kevin Durant. I don't think Kevin Durant's going to lead any team to a championship.
Well, regardless, we'll move past that. We'll talk about free agency next week. Number 9, this is the weird one. Memphis picks Zach Edey. And Zach Edey is actually a great story. He's a good player. He's like 7'4". He he's slow. He's a big, slow, strong scorer in the post. It was kind of one of those confusing fits for me. I feel like the Memphis Grizzlies play a little too fast for him. They did have Steven Adams, so maybe they're hoping he replaces what Steven Adams had.
They're probably looking at it like, hey, this guy, we could, build him up and he could be Rudy Gobert like. Because Rudy Gobert is a big, slow guy. He has a defensive presence. He can block shots. He can guard in the paint, but he's not chasing anybody on the perimeter. So if you look at that, and a lot of people are high on Rudy Gobert, he is consistently Defensive Player of the Year, despite what I think, despite what he shows. He is sought after in the NBA by many teams. Maybe they think that this kid can get in shape and be that style of basketball player.
He's not.
I don't think so
Yeah,
either
he's a
from what I've
much,
seen.
much better offensive player. He's nowhere near Rudy Gobert defensively. Like,
No, and
regardless of Rudy
he's not as
Gobert,
athletic.
regardless of Rudy Gobert being slow, Rudy Gobert's position defense is actually really good. It's
Right.
actually really good. So
He's
like,
a very high IQ player.
right. So like, defensively, he is.
Yes,
Defensively,
correct.
he is. So that was the one like pick that like I thought Zach Edey might go to like 15 to 20s, and for him to get picked in 9th was like, I didn't get it. So I thought there was a lot of other picks that they should have gone with, but that's what they went with. But moving on, Cody Williams, brother of Jalen Williams, from the OKC Thunder, got picked 10th by the Utah Jazz. I thought it was a good pickup. He's a good player too. He's not as good as his brother, but he's going to be a good NBA player. I think he has a career in the league, just being a 3-and-D guy. And then the pick that I absolutely loved, I couldn't believe that he fell the next 2 guys, I couldn't believe they fell this far, but Matis Bazulis, he is a Chicago-born kid, and he got picked by the Chicago Bulls. So this is kind of one of those things I was talking about. Matis has a lot of potential. He He's about 6'9", 6'10", super athletic, can shoot the ball, can run the floor. He has a really high ceiling. He needs a little bit more time to develop, but this is kind of what I was talking about, like with that whole Giddey trade. You kind of start putting together guys that you could start building around, looking for a superstar that could fit next to them. And I feel like with Mattis and Giddey, you have something you start working with. So I think the Bulls did pretty well in this draft. I know Omar's not there right now. I would have loved to hear what his thoughts were on this pick, but I don't know if you know anything about him, Mike. He
Not
works
a
out with
thing.
Cooper Flag every off season. They're friends. They're very similar body size. Cooper Flag's better than him, but Mattis is really good. So he wasn't supposed to fall this far. Most people had him projected 3 to 8. So for him to fall to 11 was a blessing for the Chicago Bulls. I think he'll be a great fit there. And then the other one, which was a really shocker to me, was Nikola Topic falling to 12. He actually got drafted by the OKC Thunder. I personally did not like the OKC Thunder picking him. Maybe losing Giddey, they wanted to have another playmaker, which Topic is. He's a 6'6" point guard. I would have loved to see him go to the Spurs, especially in that number 8 pick. I know the Spurs traded it away, but personally, I would have loved to see Topic go to the Spurs. I thought he would be phenomenal with Wemby. 13, Sacramento Kings picked Devin Carter. He's another guard. 14, Portland drafted Carlton Carrington, which was traded to the Washington Wizards. That was just an okay pick, to be honest, to me. This was a great pick, by the way. Miami at 15, picking Kel'el Ware. Kel'el Ware is a 7'1", super athlete who runs the floor and plays really hard. He's gonna thrive in Miami, especially playing with Jaime Jaquez. That's a lot of energy coming off the bench. They're gonna run the floor like crazy with those two. Him coming off the bench for Bam is perfect for him. Great pickup. Miami did good with that pick. He was projected to go a little lower than this, but fit wise, he's phenomenal for Miami.
So
Yeah.
Zico, so is it did 3 7-footers go in the first round?
3 7-footers go in the first round. There was a lot of 7-footers that went in the first round.
Oh no, I forgot to count
So
Alexander.
So we had Alexander Sarr, we had Donovan Clingan, we had Zach Edey, we had Kel'el Ware. There was one more. I don't remember who the other one was. We'll go through them and we'll get through all these. But 16 is your boy now, Omar. Jared McCain getting drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, shout out to Corona Centennial and Corona kid, local California kid, going in the first round. But I do have to say that he is also he's a byproduct and a result of this weak draft to go in the first round. I don't think if he would have been in any other draft, he would be going in the first round. So I think he's coming out at the right time, and so hopefully it translates for him. I know he did have some good games for Duke, but then again, I don't know if he's going to be able to be a long-term NBA player.
So my take on Jared McCain, because I did watch him play a little bit, is I think he could be a long-term NBA player. I just think he's the kind of player that you won't see his impact for the first 2 or 3 years. He's going to be someone who's going to be coming off the bench, figuring things out, and it might take a little bit of time for him. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think Nick Nurse is really good at this in terms of developing some of the guys like this. So I think it's a good fit for him personally. So we'll see how it works out for him. But then number 17, Dalton Connect, again, Lakers. I like this pick a lot. Great shooter, great player for the Lakers to get, have him fall to 17. So I think all Lakers fans should be happy with that pick. 18, Orlando picked Tristan da Silva. I was a little confused why they drafted another forward. They have like 15 of them, but they really like their athletic forward. So it's normal for them at this point. I feel like every year they draft a forward. 19, Toronto picked Jacoby Walter. I don't know that much about Jacoby Walter. Omar, do you know anything about him? Okay. There's a few here that I'm gonna have a little less knowledge regarding once we get to this point. 20, Jalen Tyson, same thing. I don't have too much information about him. 21, Evis Missy, New Orleans Pelicans. Don't have too much information on him, although he is another 7-foot center. He was the other 7-foot center I was thinking about. There is one more as well, I believe, that was drafted. No, he was the last one. No, there's one more. Yes. Number 22, Phoenix Suns traded the draft pick, Deron Holmes II, who was a forward center, who was a 6'11" big man. Milwaukee drafted AJ Johnson. I don't have too much information about him. The Knicks drafted Keyshawn George at 24. However, they traded that to the Washington Wizards. The Knicks also had the 25th pick, which was Pacomi Dadiet, another French player. He's a French forward, excuse me. That's one of those stash picks. They're probably going to leave him over there and let him develop. And the Knicks got the 26th pick, which was Dylan Jones, and they traded that to the OKC Thunder for 5 second-round draft picks. That was a confusing situation where it was like you got Caruso for no draft picks, and without giving any draft picks, but you take the 26th pick and give up 5 draft picks. So I think OKC just really didn't want to help the Chicago Bulls. 27, Terrence Shannon Jr. was drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves, another forward. 28, Denver Nuggets drafted Ryan Dunn, which was traded to Phoenix. That was a trade for the 22nd pick. 29, Utah Jazz drafted Isaiah Collier. I think that's a USC kid. And then
USC big guard, scoring guard. There was questions about his playmaking ability, and he said it in his draft interview that he's actually a better passer than what he showed at USC. So it's interesting to see how that translates to the NBA.
The last pick is by the Boston Celtics. They drafted a 6'6" player named Baylor Shireman out of Creighton. I don't know too much about him, but he'll fit right in because he's a white boy. And the Boston Celtic fans will love him. So gotta call it like it is, right? Right, Mike?
Yep. I'm looking at this ESPN's best available for round 2, and they got Bronny at 25th.
Yeah, 55th pick by the Lakers, literally.
You think so?
I mean, if he's 25th and there's 30 picks in the draft and Lakers have 55th pick, it's ironic that they send him up as the 25th best prospect.
Okay. I don't think anyone's paying attention to that when it comes to Bronny.
Well, it kind of popped into my head when you said it. So there are a couple of good players still available in the second round that could be good fillers for some teams, you know.
Will this go down as the worst draft of all time?
No, see, that's what I was saying. I don't think this is the worst draft. There's just no superstars.
Okay.
You know, like even Chet Holmgren, like I love Chet, but like he's not a superstar, right? Like he's like a really good like second or third option. There's like not one guy in here, like even Sarr, like he's not a number 1 player. There's no one on this in this draft that you could feel like, oh, this guy is going to change my franchise. There's no one like that in this draft. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody develops into that because sometimes that does happen. You know, like Nikola Jokic was drafted like 42nd. You know, no one expected that. So sometimes there are guys that develop into something special, but I see that with this draft.
So if you do a Google search, right, they got 2000 as the worst draft class of all time.
Which draft was that? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Kenyon Martin was the number 1 pick, and then Stromile Swift, Darius Miles, Marcus Fizer, Mike Miller. You had Jamal Crawford at 8, and then literally Hedo Turkoglu at 16, Quentin Richardson at 8.
I saw, and then you had Darius Miles in that same pick as well. I mean, the same draft, and yes, I saw the same article that you're reading here.
You have Michael Redd.
But the thing is some of those players that we're mentioning right now, some of them had long NBA careers. Like you said, not a lot of them were superstar, ran over them. But then again, you can't take away the impact that Kenyon Martin had on the Nets' run to the NBA Finals. You know what I'm saying? Even though they lost to the Lakers.
Well, even in
Denver,
yeah.
And you can't take away
Mikey Miller, what he did.
Yeah, and you can't take away what Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles brought to the Lakers when, you know, that was more for entertainment and
Clippers
and whatnot.
Clippers, yeah.
Clippers, that's what I meant, the Clippers. So, and then you can't take away Jamal Crawford going down as one of the best 6 men to play in the NBA.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So you got a draft of 60 people, and you got 4 guys who you'd say had successful careers.
No, I would say there's a couple more if we start going through the names.
I just scrolled through it. You got Kenyon Martin, you got Mike Miller, Jamal Crawford, and where'd he go? Hedo Turkoglu. And I mean, Quentin Richardson, if you want to give him that. I wouldn't say Darius Miles had a successful career for what he was supposed to be.
No,
You're
he
not giving
underachieved, but
You're not giving Mark Madsen anything. You're not giving Eddie House anything.
Well, there were other
Michael
players
Redd.
that were serviceable players for many years as well. Like Desmond Mason was a serviceable player. Jamal McGlure was a serviceable player. Jamal McGlure played like 15 years in the NBA. He was like a backup big man, but he did consistently play. Morris Peterson too was actually a really good player. Deshaun Stevenson, and then Mamadou Njai was like a
But I mean,
big
out
man.
of that whole list, you've got
Chris Mihm,
two guys that made an All-Star game, right?
right?
And you've got one guy who made an All-NBA team in Michael Redd.
Marco
That's
Jaric was
it.
a really good point guard for many years as well with the Clippers.
But
Eddie House, like I mean, there's players like the
there's going to be players. I mean, they have to fill a roster out, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that didn't even play in a single game.
Yeah, but I mean, look, Mike, I told
So I
you,
don't think this will be that.
I yeah, I don't think it's this bad personally. I don't think this draft is this bad, but like again, it's hard to say. Like I think it could be similar to this. You're gonna find some good players out of it. I think you'll probably find a few more good players out of this draft than this what you're talking about now. But
Hopefully
also,
these guys develop.
yeah, I think that again, like you're looking at like role players on this draft. You're not going to see any like. I'm trying to think. Omar, do you think Alexander Sarr will be a better player than Kenny Martin was?
that's a very, very valid question. I think Kenyon Martin's impact on the game from a defensive standpoint, the block shots that he did, the the dunking, you know what I'm saying, the lob, the lob city with Jason Kidd. I don't know if Alexander Sarr is going to bring that same kind of excitement to watching that game, because we also all talked about this before. We're in a different climate of this NBA, the type of the game is, but just looking back of like all those names that we mentioned from the 2000 draft, like a lot of those guys that may have not had the superstar tag to them in the draft, but became serviceable starters in the NBA.
Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
that's what this draft is too.
and that's the thing. If these players become starters and have the extended careers that these other players had, only time will tell. Because the Michael Reds, the Jamal McGlure, the Mo Petersons, like Mo Peterson was at certain nights the leading scorer for the Hornets. You know what I'm saying? Desmond Mason, like he goes under the radar a lot, but people forget that Desmond
Did he
Mason
win
when
a
he
dunk
was,
contest too?
yes, he did.
Yeah,
But Desmond Mason had a run with Milwaukee and then Seattle.
Speedy
So it's a
Claxton
lot.
too.
Speedy Claxton, you know what I'm saying? Eddie House, he had a long career, you know what I'm saying, in the NBA. And we won't be able to, on paper right now, there's a debate of which class is the worst, but until this rookie class right now exceeds 10, 15 years of NBA career, is the only going to be the time when you're going to actually give it a fair comparison to
I
see
think
how these
we'll be
players
able to see it
are.
in 5 years personally. I think in 5 years, if you look at this draft and half this draft is like already gone, like non-existent and weren't playing, that's going to answer your question. But you also might be in
I
five
agree.
years looking at someone who's like, wow, I had no clue. Like number one pick, Rishiker becomes like develops into what they thought he might be. That could happen, and it's like it all works out. So
Flag this episode so we can come back in 5 years and see how it goes. And everybody else like and subscribe so you can come back and do the same thing.
let's end it there because next week we could talk about free agency. It's going to start at that point anyway, and I
Well, I'm
think
also interested to see how the second round goes tomorrow.
yeah.
Being that this is the first time the NBA actually does this, the question I have for it is it because they think it's the weakest draft they wanted to build a hype between the two rounds? Because this is the first year they do.
They're trying to make money.
No, you know
Well-
what? I don't think that's it. Most people, excuse me, don't watch the second round of the draft anyway. I think splitting it onto 2 nights might make it easier just because, dude, it's like 5 hours long. Like
Well,
it's long enough to finish.
realistically, I mean, if we're gonna think about this and really go through it, people are gonna watch tomorrow because they want to see where Bronny goes. Once Bronny gets drafted, people are turning off their TV.
But still, like I think more people watch it tomorrow than they were watching the second half when it was all together.
Maybe, but I think this draft they would have kept watching until Bronny's off the table.
We'll see, because there's always trades and stuff that happen too that people like hearing. So we'll see how it works out.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's end it there. Thank you guys for tonight, and we'll see everybody next week.
Sir, have a good night.
Good night.